was quite a rock star entrance. I hope I live up to that. Let me start, if I can, by giving just a brief intro to myself, because my job title is VP Digital Engineering, and I've been warned that makes everybody think that I'm all about PDM and PLM and quite, from my perspective, boring back office processes, meaning no disrespect to those people who find that fascinating. Digital engineering in the context of rtsila is a core discipline within our digitalization strategy about really bringing the technologies to bear, which are going to support all the new business models, all the new products, all the new ways of interacting with our customers that we're hoping to generate. So I come very much from a kind of a startup background. I've been dumped inside a great big 184-year-old company. And what I want to talk about today is a set of reflections that I and some of my colleagues have had in terms of doing digital transformation, around IoT, AI, because that's the sort of company we need to be. What are some of the pitfalls we've had in pushing this through the organization? It's very much a reflection. It does say how to avoid. I don't have all the answers on how to avoid them. And to be honest, part of the reason for me being up here is kind of to openly share, because I'm really hoping that some of you, after this talk, are going to come up and tell me actually how I avoid these, because maybe you've had the same problems. That said, let me kind of walk through some of the things we've seen. Apparently, a brief interlude, apparently when you start at MIT, if you're a student at MIT, on your first day there, the freshman class sits in an auditorium like this, and the dean stands up at the front and he says, look to your left, look to your right. Out of the three of you sitting there, one of you is not going to be here in 4 years, because apparently that's the attrition rate in MIT. 1/3 of their undergraduates don't make it through to a full degree. Well, for digital transformation, the case is even worse, actually. 84%, 7 out of 8 companies fail. So I'm going to look across this audience here, and I'm going to say 7 out of 8 of you, right? Basically, only you guys are going to succeed. Right? The rest of you are all going to fail. There you go. How can you ensure that you are part of these cool guys over there, not the rest of you dumbasses? This is what I'm trying to get at. We think there are 3 key things to get right: strategy, behavior, and investment. That's a very high-level kind of analysis. What do we mean? Oh yeah, I'm going to skip through these briefly. This is a view of what you need to do to do digital transformation. On the left-hand side, we have our starting point, our goals. Why are we trying to do this? Well, money. How are we going to get that money? What's our own analysis of the situation? What can we see externally about where we are, what we need to change? How are we going to drive that change? What are the new things we need to do, the behaviors we need to promote? And then you kind of go through the big star in the middle there, which is really it should be a big question mark. What do we have to do? We know we have a problem. We want to get to the end, which is leadership, comms, culture change, well, money in the end, right? What are some processes we want to go through? For the sake of this presentation, we've identified 10 things. 10 things where there are ways that you can go wrong. So let me, at roughly 90 seconds per point, try and walk through some of these. Any of them can be a downfall. What I will try to talk about is what is a typical approach, what are possibly pitfalls, and what are some of our best bets? Now, I should say, I personally don't necessarily agree with all these best bets. What you're looking at here is a kind of some accumulated wisdom around the group of people doing digitalization in rtsila. It is a best bet. It may or may not be right. I personally agree more with some than others, but I think there is an interesting way to approach the problem. So, target setting and analysis. Right? Back on the left there. How do we get into this problem? What are we actually trying to get at? It is very easy to stand up there at the beginning of a transformation process, and you know what? We're going to be a software company. This is something we do quite a lot in rtsila. I like to call us an accidental software company in some ways. We're a very old industrial company. We have very deep industry expertise in certain segments, marine engines, a lot of marine equipment. These days, all of that involves software. so we have lots of software expertise. We know that we want to move towards a model where we have many more as-a-service business models. We have ecosystems plays supported by data platforms. We have software-hosted solutions which will address all of our customers' various needs. So we're going to be a software company, right? And we've made acquisitions to prove that. We are not a software company, right? We have ambitions to get there, but we need to appreciate we're not. We know exactly how this industry works, right? Well, we know how it has worked. Do we know how it's going to work in the future? Do we understand all the motivations moving forwards? No, not clearly. We're going to unlock the value of ecosystems. Well, yeah, that's what we need to do, but do we have a deep understanding of what that actually means? So there's a whole sort of set of pitfalls here, primarily around the fact these are a very vague set of ambitions. So, what to do? Well, some approaches. Be much more concrete. Set targets. Set realistic targets. Understand your heritage, right? Where are you coming from? Genuinely, where are you coming from? There are strengths there, and there are weaknesses, but you have to have a clear path from where you're going, and that means really having an appreciation of where you are. Do much more analysis, and make sure to take external viewpoints into account much more. And this is something that actually, certainly from a Varts perspective, is hard for a lot of people to do, to kind of take an outside-in look. And really, it's building that very detailed bridge. Organization structure is one of the mechanisms by which you need to push this change through. And there's a range of options there. We did some analysis here, naming no names against those, but depending on your maturity, on your goals or your aims, you might want a very centralized structure, you might want a very decentralized structure, you probably want something in the middle. But it is worth having a very informed understanding of your organization and what is going to work there before you leap blindly in with a particular organizational structure, because that's going to change all your internal incentives. Strategic resource allocation. So this is quite an interesting one for me, I think, in that what you are inevitably, from a Vartsa perspective, what we are trying to do is very much a global transformation. We have lots and lots of business lines doing lots and lots of things. They're all very good at what they're doing. As a digital transformation, we're trying to move the whole organization forward. We're not trying to concentrate on this product line here or this product line here. We're trying to bring capabilities to bear which allow us to push everybody forward, which allow us to work with innovations or innovative concepts that kind of span all the various competencies we have. And that's really hard in an organization organized like a traditional industrial company, because you have these silos. And the silos exist for good reason. It's not because everyone is trying to not cooperate and not hide things. It's because actually, as an industrial equipment company, that's a very efficient way to organize yourself to drive product development, to drive market growth, because traditional industrial equipment works the way it does in its own terms, and the notion of cooperation, if you like, between different divisions is much less important. In digital, that's the whole point. Digital lets us build virtual bridges, electronic bridges, which is something that made no sense 20 years ago. So necessarily, you're trying to push things forward strategically. And that's hard for divisions that allocate the resources in a silo. Cognitive bias, they all think in their own terms, they don't understand other people's point of view. Corporate politics, which does not exist at Wärtsilä. We are a harmonious organization where there are never any arguments between divisions. That may not be true for some of your organizations, of course. Inertia, nobody needs to change. Where's the force for them to change? So what we've said here is our best bet around that is to try and generate a strategic view, effectively, to build one portfolio, to go across all the different divisions and surface what they're doing, so that, in our case, the various work that is going on in marine solutions, that's one of our big divisions, marine solutions around managing assets on a vessel, some of which are engines. Right? That's one group of work that is happening. Over here, we have our services division. Our services division are also working on asset management of our engines, but in a generic capacity. Can we surface the right innovations, the right products, the right projects in such a way that we leverage the fact that both of these organizations want parallel but not yet overlapping things? Can we build that one portfolio? the answer is a qualified yes or no, but at least having that conversation surfaces a lot of these tensions. Can we build it within one framework? Now, this for me is a big key here, because if you want to, because you need an incentive structure that lets people cooperate, that lets people go, oh, actually, I'm sitting in marine solutions, and I'm really interested in asset management, and I see my colleagues over there in services are. So what is my incentive for collaborating with them, given cognitive bias, corporate politics, and inertia? A technology framework is a big way to do that, and that's something that we've spent a lot of time working with, because if you can find a technology framework that lets people, or that offers people benefits from cooperating, from engaging with that technology framework, then you've pulled them together into a place where actually cooperation is easier than not cooperating. And I think that's a key thing. You have to make it easier to cooperate, because as long as it's harder, people won't. They've got too many other things in their day jobs. So, and this is my perspective as VP of digital engineering, but I do think this is somewhere where technology has a really powerful role to play in digitalization, not just in bringing capabilities, but in providing a framework for people to interact. Simplified resourcing, I should say that it's a bet. It's not a bet that has paid off for us yet. It's really hard to, we want to push a simplified view of resourcing. We want to be able to say, look, if you get your resourcing structured right around your technology framework, around your single portfolio view across the organization, then a simplified view of resourcing is really going to help you exploit that. In our experience to date, silos is the wrong word, divisions are very, very wary of losing control of their own resourcing, and I absolutely understand that. And it's something we haven't yet found a way through. So we would like to have simplified resourcing, but for me, on this particular pitfall, the one framework, the technology framework for allowing collaboration is the key thing to push through. I think the rest will follow from there. Pitfalls and competencies, it's really hard to hire good people. Again, I'm not claiming to have an answer yet for that. We know we need a different set of competencies for the sort of work we're trying to do. We acquire some of those via M&A. We acquire some of those via sort of divisional HR campaigns, as it were. Do we have a global corporate view which enables us to push our competency development forward? Well, no, we don't. So we have some bets, some hypotheses about how we might be able to push these forward, and we can point individually to places where each of those things have worked. If I was forced to pick one out of all of these, it would be create mission. There needs to be a very clear drive to what we're doing. We've sort of tried hiring competencies a bit in the abstract. We know we're going to need some UX designers. Let's hire some more UX designers, and you can do that. But there's much more impetus to that, much more point to that, if it's very tied to specific projects, specific deliverables that capture people's minds, both in terms of the direct hiring process, but also in terms of internally defending that hiring process. We need new UX experts, not because UX is an important competency, but because projects X, Y, and Z really, really need that. And that really helps with that. Rewards. Now, this is actually a bit of a bad example, but this for me is definitely one of the problems we're having around moving our internal processes around to improve competency management, which is a bit of a mouthful. In a digitally managed organization, we work to very different timescales. We work rapidly. We fail fast. We pull projects from one project to another according to need. If you're in a startup, right, it's easy or it's easier to do this in a way because everyone thinks they're going to be a millionaire at the end of the way. People will go above and beyond in a way that they might not within a traditional corporation, and that's understandable because we're not dangling $1 million paycheck at them. Equally, though, we're locked into HR processes which are designed for a very different sort of organization, where we have annual target setting, annual bonus setting, where we have resource allocation plans that work annually. So if we need to pull person X out of their core role and dump them into an agile-style project for 4 weeks, how do we do that? How do we motivate them to do that? Because they've just got to drop all their other projects, and some other soul will manage them for 4 weeks, and they'll come back and have to clear up the mess. And actually their manager will be going, oh, but I really need him because I've got a bunch of customer projects coming up. How do we find a way to structure the organization so we can pull them out, reward the guy himself or the woman herself, reward the organization? There's a hard set of questions to answer on that. And again, we've tried various things. We've got projects going on with HR to formalize the process of pulling person X out here. I should say we have these things called digital acceleration centers, which are homes for some of these digital projects where we will run 4, 6, 8-week sprints around a concept. But in order to do that, and that was easy to set up, relatively, it's been quite hard to make the rest of the organization understand that it needs to let go of some resources for 4, 6, 8 weeks in order to run this trial. You probably can't, well, you can see that diagram, but you're not meant to understand that diagram. The point of it is it's very complicated. This is an attempt to illustrate, as I say, draft, some of our internal innovation models or innovation development models. How do we surface these innovations? How do we curate them? How do we develop them? How do we bootstrap them? How do we push them through to product? We have lots of divisions with lots of ways of thinking about this. We just need to simplify it. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's not a finished task. But it is really important, despite the fact that you end up fighting a lot of corporate politics, effectively, because the organization needs to see progress. It's not surprising, but it's one of the things that's really come home to us. If you can't demonstrate the value of digitalization to the organization, if you can't have clear, visible sense of innovations being generated, innovations being curated, innovations being propagated, innovations ideally coming all the way through to business value, then it's really hard to maintain a sense of momentum. And so, although everyone really does want to hold on to their own silos here, actually there's an enormous value, the extent to which you can put visibility and organizational buy-in around a single process. And that is one I would definitely concentrate on. Hand-wavy, leadership, communications, culture. It's hard. It's hard because you're working in an organization where the leadership are not, by and large, digital natives. All the P&L holders, all the sort of senior VP level people in the traditional organization don't really understand the consequences of a digital strategy. They understand the need for it, fully bought into the need for it. There's no doubts there. They can see the way the world is. They can see the way the world's moving. They know we can't be in the same place 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now as we are today. But they're a bit disconnected from the consequences. Right? They know it needs technology investment. Okay, but how do we do it? What are the if we're going to build a technology framework, do they really understand what that means down the road? If we're going to invest in IoT capabilities at an organizational wide level, do they understand what that means for their own budget planning processes? There's the danger, because of this, that we make a big fuss about investing in technology, about the amazing capabilities we're bringing to bear in the organization, and then there can be a very, very big and obvious gap between what we're talking about as capabilities and actually what we're selling to our customers, what projects we're building today. The longer that gap goes unaddressed, the more sort of trust that you lose along the way. And potentially, actually, the very real risk that you miss the business focus. If you want to build organizational-wide competencies, which you do for all the obvious reasons, then you're necessarily building them with a gap between the 53 million ways that you are actually going to use them to hit customer value. So you cannot afford to drop any of the comms duties and comms roles you have along the way there. This is not news to anybody, but it really is one of the ways that we ourselves have found ourselves failing again and again along this way. We assume that things are obvious, and they're not obvious. We assume that it will all become apparent once this project is finished, but actually we don't get quite far enough because people kind of lose trust because we haven't demonstrated the value. It's not that the value's not there, but we haven't communicated well enough, either to sort of the top-level stakeholders or even broadly within the organization, because that's what informs ultimately the view of the top-level stakeholders. So I'll wrap up now quickly because I have 35 seconds left. You can read as well as I can. There's a lot of ways to get this wrong. And digital is all about fail fast. But you have to be prepared to fail fast, not only on individual projects, but I think broadly about ways of working. I think it is something where a lot of knowledge sharing really helps. The lessons that we're learning inside of rtsila, some of those are rtsila specific. I'm sure a lot of them aren't. As I say, I would very much appreciate the chance to open up these discussions with lots of people. I will be standing for most of the rest of the day somewhere over there by the Maidagon stand. So please feel free to come along and bend my ear, or any of the other guys in Maidagon. Thank you very much for listening, though.